Hi, and welcome to The Deep Dive. So today, we're going to really dig into something that makes a lot of economists kind of scratch their heads. Donald Trump's specific thinking on tariffs. You know, what really drives that America First trade policy? We've looked through quite a bit of material to unpack his reasoning, which, yeah, it often goes against mainstream economic ideas.
Okay, let's dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. And our goal here for you today is really just to impartially lay out the core arguments, the motivations as they're presented in the sources we looked at. We want you to get the ideas, but without us taking any sides, of course. What's fascinating here, I think, is understanding the specific logic behind it all.
Okay, so getting into it, what really jumped out, I think, was this core idea, this foundational belief that Trump saw trade as a zero-sum game. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe break down what that means for how he approached trade deficits and how tariffs fit in? Right. So if you look at it from that angle, a trade deficit isn't just a number. It's like a loss. And a surplus, well, that's the win. So tariffs become the tool, the direct way to try and rebalance things. The stated aim was to make foreign goods cost more, making them less appealing, and sort of nudging consumers, businesses towards buying American stuff instead. The theory being this boosts local manufacturing, creates jobs here. Okay. A very direct cause and effect idea.
Right, stimulating domestic production. Okay. So it wasn't just about protecting industries at home then. Our research showed tariffs also became this tool against what he called unfair trade practices. What did the sources say that looked like?
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to this whole idea of reciprocity. The materials pointed to accusations against countries, especially China, for things like stealing intellectual property, manipulating currency, or unfairly subsidizing their industries. Tariffs, in this view, were a way to push back, to retaliate against those perceived unfair actions and force a more, quote, level playing field.
Okay, reciprocal. And that connects to using them as leverage too, right? Like a negotiating tool. We definitely saw that mentioned with the whole NAFTA renegotiation, turning it into the USMCA. How did the sources describe that strategy?
Yes, that was a big part of it. The sources suggest tariffs were explicitly used to pressure trading partners. Put them in a tough spot to get concessions. It turned tariffs into a direct foreign policy lever.
A lever, right.
And it wasn't just about trade deals either. The material showed instances, like with Mexico, where tariffs were threatened or used to get cooperation on completely different issues, like border security. So their use became, much broader than just economics.
That's a really wide scope. Okay, but what about the money side? There was this claim Trump often made that tariffs mean other countries pay, maybe even paying down the national debt or funding tariff rebate checks for Americans. Did the sources explain why that specific claim was made, especially since, most economists see it very differently?
That's a really key distinction, isn't it? While that claim was definitely part of the messaging, the economic viewpoints within the source materials consistently argue something else. They basically say tariffs are taxes paid primarily by the American companies importing the goods.
Okay.
And then often passed on to you, the consumer, via higher prices. So it's not quite the picture of foreign countries footing the bill that was sometimes painted.
So it sounds like there's just a fundamental disagreement there on who actually bears the cost. Okay, let's shift gears a bit then to another big justification we found. Security, both economic and national security. How is that argument framed in the sources?
Well, the sources definitely gave some specific examples. Think about the tariffs on steel and aluminum. Those were often justified as protecting industries considered vital for national defense. You need domestic steel for tanks, for ships, that kind of thing. You also saw things like the tariff threat against India over buying Russian oil. The underlying argument there is that being too reliant on foreign nations for critical supplies or letting trade benefit geopolitical rivals poses a long-term risk to the U.S.
Right, a vulnerability. So looking at all these different angles, protection, negotiation, revenue claims, security, how did the broader economic context in our sources frame this overall approach?
It's interesting. It really feels like a throwback in some ways. Many analyses we saw likened it to mercantilism, that old economic idea from the 17th, 18th centuries, where the focus is all on national self-sufficiency, hoarding gold, maximizing exports, and minimizing imports through things like tariffs.
Okay. Unlike modern free trade ideas.
Exactly. It contrasts sharply with the modern consensus around free trade, which emphasizes comparative advantage, specialization, and the idea that trade can be mutually beneficial. And of course, the sources also detailed the common criticisms. tariffs potentially leading to higher prices for consumers like you, messing with global supply chains, and provoking retaliatory tariffs that hurt American exporters.
So wrapping up, this deep dive has hopefully given you a clearer picture of the specific sort of multi-layered rationale behind Donald Trump's tariff policies, as presented in the sources we looked at, covering everything from economic protection and negotiation tactics to those revenue claims and security arguments. It's a very particular way of looking at global trade.
Yeah, it is. And maybe the big question to leave you with is this. Understanding these distinct rationales is one thing, right? But what are the actual results, the real-world consequences intended or maybe unintended when this kind of fundamentally different approach to trade gets implemented? It's definitely something worth continuing to explore, these complex trade dynamics.